Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. We are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right. I myself am strange and unusual.
Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea, because it's time for the Coven Podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven, you guys.
We've got a special... Oops.
Oh, go ahead.
Who goes?
Who goes?
Look, we're both excited because this is like officially our first spooky episode for October 2020.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Wendy kind of had this idea to call it a spooky state of mind as we talk about Texas, one of the biggest states, and we're hoping to fill it with lots of big paranormal phenomena.
Yes, and we can't wait. So let's talk stats real quick here.
Yes, break it down.
For UFOs, the best place to hide from UFOs is Texas.
Yes, that's lovely. I mean, honestly, we were both shocked when we got this stat. I thought that it would be a higher ranking, seeing as it's such a big place. Everyone's always talking about how the skies are bigger in Texas, and having lived there for so long, I can attest to that. Like, it is big open skies when you're not in the city. And I thought we had all these like ranchers seeing UFOs and stuff. So I think it's just 2020 in general. They've had lower sightings than normal. And we were asking each other, we were like, is that based on like how many people are in the state versus the amount of sightings, and that's why it's so low?
Right. And I can't really tell. Look, I'm already talking with an accent. Come on, Texas accent. Okay, pardon me. I'm sorry I said that.
Nobody
so I
talks like that either. And like, I'm sorry, guys.
And that is per capita. So they've had 375 sightings overall per 1. It sounds like there's 1.29 sightings per person per capita.
Okay. What's your next stat?
So my next one is Bigfoot, and they actually rank 7th. So they're within the top 10 of Bigfoot sightings, and ghosts third highest rated state in the United States for ghost activity, I mean, of course there's ghosts. There's been so much war and fighting and death there.
Right.
So of course it would be ranked one of the highest for ghosts.
Yeah.
I am excited though. Bigfoot lives in Texas.
He does.
I found some really cool Bigfoot stories that he just, people used to confuse him with the dog man there because they couldn't tell the difference between a dog and a gorilla. Like they would say it was like an 8-foot tall gorilla dog-like creature, hairy all over. Look, I'm talking with an accent. It's so stupid. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh.
And we forgot to mention, this was a listener request that we do Texas.
Yeah.
So this was the state that was demanded that we handle. So just FYI, this one's for you guys.
Yes. And I know you used to live there, so,
I could speak from experience. It is definitely a paranormal place. I had a lot of first ghost experiences there. I heard my first ghost there. Had a lot of fun living there, going to haunted places. Just in downtown San Antonio alone, you just walk and there's like every building is haunted and has a messed up history with bloody massacre and murder. So
right,
lots of ghosts everywhere.
Yeah. I feel like just the whole world is haunted and we don't give it credit.
Exactly. But we decided to, be human about it and break it down in state lines. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do we want to get into one of our highlighted paranormal incidences or phenomenon?
Yes.
Where do we want to start?
So how about if I start off with a UFO incident, because it might be the only one they've ever had.
No way. Okay, no way. Okay, go.
I'm just kidding. I know that there have been more, and it's just crazy that they were rated so low. I was really surprised by that myself. But I came across this one. It's actually one of my favorite UFO incidents of all time, because it happened so long ago, but it's in Aurora, Texas. So they call it the Aurora UFO Incident. And this, I wanted to start off by reading this newspaper article that I found because it kind of details what happened. And this article is from the Dallas Morning News on April 19th, 1897. Yes, you heard me right, 1897, way before Roswell. And this incident happened actually on April 17th, but the article was written by a man named S.E. Hayden. And it's titled A Windmill Demolishes It. And it says, about 6 o'clock this morning, the early risers of Aurora were astonished at the sudden appearance of the airship which has been sailing through the country. So apparently this UFO was traveling from place to place. It was traveling due north and much nearer the Earth than ever before. Evidently, some of the machinery was out of order, for it was making a speed of only 10 to 12 miles an hour and gradually settling toward the Earth. It sailed directly over the public square, like right through the middle of downtown Aurora. When it reached the north part of town, collided with the tower of Judge Proctor's windmill and went to pieces with a terrific explosion, scattering debris over several acres of ground, wrecking the windmill and water tank and destroying the judge's flower garden.
Wow. Okay, so we have like physical evidence of an existence of a flying craft.
Right. And the rest of the article says the pilot of the ship is supposed to have been the only one on board. And while his remains are badly disfigured, enough of the original has been picked up to show that he was not an inhabitant of this world. Mr. T.J. Weems, the United States Signal Service officer at this place and an authority on astronomy, gives it as his opinion that he was a native of the planet Mars. Papers found on his person, evidently the record of his travels, are written in some unknown hieroglyphics and cannot be deciphered. The ship was too badly wrecked to form any conclusion as to its construction or motive power. It was built of an unknown metal resembling somewhat a mixture of aluminum and silver, and it must have weighed several tons. The town is full of people today who are viewing the wreck and gathering specimens of the strange metal from the debris. The pilot's funeral, you heard me right, funeral will take place at noon tomorrow.
Oh.
So, are you excited yet? Are you excited?
What's causing me to say holy shit is the hieroglyphics, the aluminum. This sounds exactly like the crash stuff that Jesse Marcel found on his farm in Roswell, New Mexico.
Exactly.
So this means that there's been a correlation of this exact same kind of thing going on longer than we ever thought. It's not a weather balloon. That means it's not even the stupid Project Paperclip. It's been going on before all of that.
Right.
So is it actually alien? Because I've been denying it's alien for a minute and trying to just be like, yeah, fine. It's the government. Fine, internet. You're not going to show me the alien bodies because there's just so many. Anyway, not to take it to Roswell, but this just makes me feel like it's aliens.
Right. Well, I do have to say that after the incident, I found out that the debris was thrown into whatever debris was left that people didn't take was thrown into a well. What? It was like the well where the windmill was. And another man purchased the farm like 40 years after they'd already sealed everything up in the well. He came in, he was like, what's this well? And he took off the lid. He didn't know anything about this UFO incident. He took all the wreckage out. He made it into a tin roof for the building that he built on top of that well. And within several years, he was diagnosed with this severe arthritis, which he claimed was because he touched the debris from the well. Then I kept trying to debunk this story. Like I had heard about this story before, like on Ancient Aliens. I've watched a documentary about this story. So to me, I was like, oh, sweet, we're doing Texas. I've got to talk about the Aurora, Texas incident. And on that one, they actually, on the documentary, they had some interviews from people before they passed away. Because we were talking, this happened in 1897. So that's a long time ago.
For sure.
But they did have some interviews from people. And legit, this, there were no other flying objects. But what gets me in the newspaper article that they had is that other people had seen this. And I failed to look up if there were any other newspaper articles from other cities that had also seen it.
Right. I mean, still, it's cool just to know that it made it to that one. So,
right.
I would imagine it spread.
Yeah. Yeah. Although most people didn't start coming to see the town until years later. But you got to imagine that things were pretty crazy in the early 1900s and the late 1800s. So having this story not make it everywhere, they didn't have the internet. So, of course, it would have taken a long time to travel to other places for people to hear about it.
What kind of solution is it to just throw shit down a well?
I don't know. It was just what they did to clean it up.
I'm guessing that well didn't have running water. Like, they're not going to taint it. So it must have just been like this hole, I guess, for storage.
Yeah,
but
it was just a hole.
I guess it protected it, which is really cool. But I'd love to see like the hieroglyphics. Have you looked at pictures? Are there pictures of this well?
No, I mean, I saw in this documentary type thing that they did where the structure was. And I mean, obviously it looks like nothing. There was nothing inside. They tested the water. I do have to tell you this other part of the story, though. In the early 80s, there was a woman named Etta Pegues. She came out into the public. She said she grew up in the town, and that she said this whole thing was a hoax, that there never was a windmill on the property of the judge. She claimed that they just needed to make this town a tourist attraction because it was falling apart. At the time of the incident, she said she was 10 years old, but when I looked for her obituary, I found out she was only 3 years old when the incident happened.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, something tells me that people were telling her things and she just ran with that story. She claimed that the man who wrote the newspaper article, that he really wanted people to come into town specifically because prior to 1897, I think it was a couple years before that, spotted fever had gone through and had killed 2 of his sons, his wife, and blinded his 3rd son and left him completely bankrupt. So he wanted to bring people into town so he could get money. So she thinks that he made the whole story up.
Gotcha.
But according to things that the documentary found, including the gravesite, that they believe that it's true, that it really happened. So let's talk about the grave really quick. So there used to always be a headstone at the grave. Like, they had a legit funeral for this person that died, and people attended. The whole town attended. People from nearby attended. And on the gravestone was, they had carved into the gravestone his ship, because he didn't have a name. So they just carved his ship, and it was cigar shaped with 3 dots. And eventually that gravestone was stolen. And every time somebody tried to replace it, the headstone was taken away.
I might have seen a picture of this gravestone.
Probably. There's some gravestone pictures out there. As to the original, I don't know what happened to it. They think somebody stole it and kept it. But at the entrance to the Aurora Cemetery, where this man supposedly lays, it says, "This site is well known because of the legend that a spaceship crashed nearby in 1897, and the pilot in the crash was buried here." Some people who kind of read that, they focus on the word legend, so they automatically think that this story didn't happen. But there are people who still flock there, and now they have this giant limestone that they've placed on it. And people go and they leave offerings on the gravestone for the space visitor.
That's cute. Like, keeping this tradition and this energy going. Like,
right.
I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, one of the stories that I had heard years ago was that there were these guys sitting around a campfire when they saw the ship about ready to go down. Like, they were getting ready for their morning day, because it did crash at dawn. So, they were sitting around the campfire having their coffee and their breakfast, getting ready to work on the fields or the farm or whatever, and saw this ship getting ready to crash. And
Dang.
yeah, so kind of crazy. There are stories of people who took the metal and turned it into lids for their pots, like for pots and pans, because it was really durable, could withstand heat. I want to say that there were some tests done. I thought there were some tests done that said that it really was aluminum and silver. We're talking about if this really did happen, which I'm leaning towards the fact that it did. This was 7 years before the first aircraft ever flew, before the Wright brothers.
Wow. Okay. That puts things into perspective.
Yeah. So if there was a metal ship flying around with a guy with hieroglyphics in his notebook, and he wasn't from here, could we hypothesize that maybe he was from the Middle East? Maybe. But wouldn't we know that? Wouldn't we have some sort of proof that they had ships during that time period?
Yeah, I don't know if we could say it's just an Earthling. We could say he's a time traveler. We could say he's an alien.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities of like what that thing was. But I like that it actually crashed, because then it goes from being like just some sort of glitch in the Matrix to like, no, it was really freaking there. It wasn't. Yeah. It was not a phantom. It was crashing. I can't even say it.
It was real. There was a fire.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting little story.
I love the town name of Aurora too. That's such a pretty name.
Yes, for sure. Well, what do you have? Tell me what you have.
Okay. So for me, when we're going to talk paranormal, I definitely had to bring us a ghost story. We at least have to have one of those. And so I took it back to my old place of location of living, which is the weirdest way of saying that. San Antonio. Downtown San Antonio, as I previously mentioned, is like just super haunted. Like, this is where the Alamo is. We've had lots of battles. And in fact, the first county jail of Bexar County was made downtown San Antonio. And that building is still standing there to this day. If you look at this haunted building, it'll look normal, I guess, at first. It's a Holiday Inn Express, and it's a limestone building, and there's actually bars on the window, and so that might be your first clue that something's a little spooky about this place. The Holiday Inn, they don't like telling people, obviously, that it's haunted. They like to keep it on the down low, because the ghosts that inhabit this place are really, really violent. It's believed that they're all just like people who were prisoners there and people who were victims of the hanging noose, because this county jail was built in 1878. So again, we're going back in time. We're going back to the Wild West. Okay. So we were fighting with just everybody at that time. I think there were Native Americans that were coming and fighting. There were all these different raids going on, and just like a lot going on. So the jail had to be built. It started off as being like a 2-story little jail, and then eventually they're like, we need to upgrade. So it got a 3rd story. And then the guy who got involved in building it decided to add this invention of like a trap door. And so they had a trap door, like hanging noose kind of thing going up on the 3rd floor, so that you bring up the prisoner to the 3rd floor, drop them through the 2 stories, and they would hang all the way down to the 1st floor, and people could just view. So a lot of times there'd be journalists, politicians, and just like the townspeople. And of course, all the prisoners were lined up on these walls in their cells, watching the people hang from the story down. From the 2nd story down to the 1st. And so they could just see him like, boom, neck cracking, hanging there, and just super creepy. Yeah. So this was a common thing going on for a while, having these public executions. And there was this guy who, I think his name's Clemente. He murdered this little boy at the Salado Creek. And it says that he had schizophrenia, and he just like really battled with a lot of mental health issues. And some people were saying like, look, it's not his fault. He murdered him. He's like, he just needs to go and get locked up. But every time he gets locked up in asylum, he would literally break out, and he broke out and killed a kid. So everyone, like half of the people were like, no, he needs to be killed. So like Clemente had like, I think 20 years just in this jail, like just sitting there waiting to decide what they were going to do with him. They eventually decided to hang him, and this became such a disgusting execution that it was the last one ever held in this jail, because when he got hung, something happened with his neck. I forgot what it's called medically, but like it snapped in such a way that like all the blood literally came gushing out. This is a real story, came gushing out into the crowd 8 feet everywhere. And it was just considered to be like a really brutal affair, and people were not, and like, you know, thinking that was a good thing to do to someone with like a mental health problem going on. So it was just like really sordid and ugly. And that was the last public execution. So this building has just had a lot of bad energy. And so to this day, like if you're staying in this haunted hotel inn, what did I call it? No, it's a Holiday Inn Express, downtown San Antonio, you could possibly see specters that are like coming from the ceiling down, like they just got hung themselves, and they'll swing there. You could get scratched, your shit could get pulled. Like one guy was saying he was typing on a laptop and it got ripped and thrown across the floor. You could get waked up like feeling like someone's clenching your bicep, and you'll in the morning you'll notice you'll have like a handprint type bruise on you. So the ghosts in here are super I guess you could say negative and toxic. One employee did go on record saying in an interview that she feels like the spirits there do feed off of your energy. So like if you're negative, they'll be more negative, and she'll notice the lights will start flickering around here, or stuff will start moving. And so if she's like tired and stressed, that's when she sees the activity. So maybe if you're like in a really good mood, high vibes, you won't even notice it. I'm not really sure. But when I heard about this, I was like, no way in hell do I want to stay in that hotel.
I'm like, as they're asking people to check in, they're like, how's your mood today? Is it positive or negative? Because if it's negative, I'm sorry, we can't check you in.
Right. Can you imagine what it's like during hard times, how negative that building could get and resonate?
Right.
So,
right. Oh man, it must be sad right now.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. In fact, they even kept like the noose, like a piece of it in the lobby for years. I think it wasn't until recently that they like took that noose from Clemente's hanging and like put it in a sheriff's office. I was like, why are you guys keeping this? Like, God, burn that shit.
I know, they should have burned it all together and not even moved it. They should have just burned it. Ugh.
Yeah, fuck.
That's rude.
I know. It is like the whole trapdoor thing too, and like that is a long drop. 2 stories, 3 stories. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's just freaking brutal. Ugh. Yay for Texas and the Wild West, though. I mean, Texas is going to have a lot of legends like that, I gotta say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots of ghost stories. Mm-hmm. Like I said, 3rd in the United States for ghosts. Yeah.
What do you think about all that negative energy, like just being in a Holiday Inn and them trying to keep it on the down low?
I was just like, man, somebody needs to sage, Palo Santo, something. They need to go in there and just cleanse the heck out of that place.
Yeah, like maybe bring a priest in with some holy water, like something like that.
For sure. Oh my goodness. So I was even thinking, like, you're telling the story, and in my mind I'm like, oh my gosh, do I need to use Reiki energy to clean that space?
Remotely?
Yeah.
It's going to be bothering you, like, just knowing that the sink is full of dirty dishes. You're just going to be thinking about the Holiday Inn. Like, oh, what's going on over there? Sorry to plant that seed, guys.
Yeah.
What other kind of phenomenon do you have on our agenda today?
Okay, well, I have the Autine swamp thing.
What the heck is that? I've never heard of that.
This is, it's in the Autine swamp, which, let me try to remember where this is at real quick. So this is in central Texas, 60 miles east of San Antonio, 15 miles north of a town called Gonzales. It's in Palmetto State Park, which is this like 5-mile walking trail, kind of beautiful park. And in there is this kind of swamp. It's called Autine Swamp because there was a man named, oh shoot, I am so sorry. This is what happens when I don't write stuff down and I just try to memorize it.
I mean, that's okay. Who cares what his name is? There was a man.
Well, you have to know. It was like his first name started with an A. Oh, Adolf. His name was Adolf Otto, and his wife's name was Christine. So they mashed the two names together to name it Autine Swamp. So it's Otto and Christine together, which I thought was the earliest mashup.
Right? Because that's like I remember thinking that Bennifer was the first time I ever heard.
Yeah, I'm like,
Ben Affleck
nope.
and Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. Nope.
Jennifer Lopez, sorry.
Jennifer Lopez. Oh, yeah, don't throw the...
Wrong Jennifer.
Right. So there have been wild claims that since like the 1800s that people had seen Bigfoot like ape creatures in this area. And at first they just thought it was some sort of ape man because he was so so wild. They just, in the 1800s, they just thought that he was an ape for sure, just a total ape man, like didn't live in civilization, and that's why he was hairy all over. And he lived part in the swamp and part out of the swamp. And a lot of people have seen creatures between 4 feet tall and 8 feet tall, and because of those discrepancies, they believe that there's a whole family of Bigfoot living in that area, and they've dubbed them the swamp creatures since they do live partially in the swamp. And so they say that their fur is like brown, black, gray, but they always walk on 2 legs. They try to call to each other in the night with their loud calls, and then also slapping on the trees with the sticks. So total Bigfoot phenomenon.
Like slapping on each other? What were you going to say? No. I'm not sure. Slapping each other in the night, howling.
Yeah, just howling.
Slapping on the trees. Okay, I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, so yeah, that's basically it, that people have just seen them walking around. I know it's not scary, but I just thought, why did they call him a swamp creature? He's my friend Bigfoot.
Yeah, do you think he's just like a hybrid of Bigfoot who just likes to be wet?
Yeah, I think that he's living where he thinks that he needs to live, and it's habitable climate. He doesn't have to deal with a lot of snow or anything like that, so he's good to go.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there have definitely been Bigfoot sightings all over in Texas. I know even my friend's mom saw one like driving on the highway one day in San Antonio. Oh. So it's just like one of those things. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
the best thing about Southerners is they are so talkative. Like, coming from the Pacific Northwest and moving to the South, one thing I noticed is that like you can just be standing in line and someone's gonna have a conversation with you or be really nice to you, or if your car's broken down, they'll like offer to help you. Like, just everyone's will just share information. So it's really great getting paranormal stories. Like, I feel like with every phenomenon, I'm like, yep, my friend's seen that. Oh, yep, my coworker's seen that. So like I've had so many friends in Texas see UFOs and ghosts and like all this stuff. So it's so exciting.
You know what's crazy is I think it used to be that way on the West Coast, but then we had a bunch of serial killers come through in the 70s and 80s. And so because of that, people don't talk to each other.
Ted Bundy ruined it all.
Yeah. And the highway killer, there was the highway killer, the Green River. Yeah, the Green River killer too. And so it's just like all these mass murderers coming through. We're like, don't pick up hitchhikers, don't talk to strangers. You're gonna get murdered.
I definitely was taught that, like, do not trust anyone, stranger danger, do not talk to people. So it's it's
big here.
South is different though. South is very like chill, go with the flow, talk to people, sit on your porch and just yell at the neighbor and see how they're doing kind of vibe. But yeah. No, I guess
do okay with that.
Right? Yeah. It's fun. It doesn't it's like at first it's like a little like, whoa.
You're freaking me out, man.
Yeah. So the next thing on my list is actually something I heard about because of a person in my life. I'm not going to out them on my podcast just in case they want to keep this like personal, but I wanted to talk about the phenomenon of the duende. They are super interesting to me, and my coworker said that she saw one, or that her significant other saw one, and in the middle of the night there was like this little goblin, evil looking goblin gremlin creature just in the doorway, just like staring at them as they slept, and then like it just scurried off into the freaking house, and like I was just like, so into it. And of course they're like, I know you're not going to believe me. This sounds freaking ridiculous, but, and I'm like, no, I believe you. I'm open to this shit. Like I can handle it. So ever since then I've been like, what the hell is this duende and where does this stuff come from? So it's kind of can be compared to like a goblin, an elf, or like an imp, just some sort of like a magical creature. And if you look up duende, you might also find flamenco dancing, because there's some sort of like term where you talk about the magic of flamenco dancing, and it's like, I think how you say it is Los Duendes del Flamenco. And so it's like you have the magic of the flamenco. So like, I don't know, there's something magical about the duende. And so when I was Googling, I was coming up with flamenco dancing. And I was like, no, wrong place. But these little guys should be like 1 to 2 feet tall typically, and these legends come from like Spain and Portugal, and there they'll talk about how the duende refers to like they're like goblins or sprites, and in general they're kind of associated with nature, kind of like a sprite. Well, they could be like a household helper, maybe like a brownie, but they are very mischievous and sometimes have like a wicked sense of humor, but they're genuinely believed not to be, or I should say generally not believed to be harmful, but they do have some exceptions. And then in parts of Latin America, the term duende refers to like a more specific type of a spirit, like they're tiny ghosts, or maybe they're souls of fetuses and unbaptized infants who died and things like that, and tragedies. And they might be hungry and persistent, like little nagging ghosts. And so there could be different backgrounds of what their nature could be like. And that kind of makes sense. It's like people, like we're all different. There's good people, bad people, asshole people going through stuff. So maybe the duende could just vary. So maybe you have a shitty one in your house feeding off bad vibes. Maybe you have a good one. So I just thought that they sounded really, really creepy, ooky, spooky. And I decided to look to see if I could find some people, aside from my coworker, who have seen some in Texas. And I did. The internet is lovely. Let me see here. I had one link I'm going to open myself. There was a guy, he was like a Texas worker, and he saw one when he was working on these gas lines. It was like, he describes it as being a miniature humanoid that he saw out of the corner of the eye. So he had to like do a double take. And then he realized it wasn't his imagination playing tricks on him. So he like snapped a photo. Let me actually share this photo with you. I'm going to put it in this little doc here with this that you can read. And then it'll be in the show notes as well, guys, if you want to click on an article. It's weekintheweird.com, small humanoid creature. So this is the duende. This happened November 2012. He was working the night shift, and I guess it was on an X-ray crew. And it was around 3 a.m. and he took this picture. It was like swaying from side to side, and he was in this basket. It's like a little man lift coming down when he took the picture. And he says by the time he unhooked the harness to get out of this little basket, the creature was completely gone. But there was definitely a person there. So they called the police and everything. They walked the premises, and the officer told him that there were 26 UFO sighting calls that night.
What the heck?
So there was a lot of weird stuff going on. So the cops weren't even like that surprised, I guess. They were like, don't feel bad about calling us. There's been a lot of weird shit tonight.
Weird. So this photo, you guys, it looks like, and actually, let me just tell you this, Sharon, and I don't know if you saw this, but in the article that you listed, there's actually a better photo if you go into the original article. And so you can see kind of this undoctored photo that they did.
Oh, yeah. So it's not as zoomed in.
Yeah, not as zoomed in, and it's so much clearer. So to me, it looks like a child with something on their back, but this child has extremely long arms.
Oh, look at the face. If you looked at the cropped one, it almost looks like it has like a black mouth and 2 black eyes.
Oh, I thought that was the back of it. That's the face.
What if? Like, at first I thought back, but then on this cropped one, it does have like this little freaky face.
Yeah, but that looks superimposed to me.
I mean, yeah.
Well, maybe not. Weird. Oh, I see now. If I'm looking at it, the way that the knees are.
Mm-hmm. It has really slender limbs.
Yeah, very slender limbs. I guess that's why I thought it was a small child, but weird. It's
I don't know
creepy.
if he said how tall he thought it was in this article or not.
To me, this looks really small.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, they're usually 1 to 2 feet.
Yeah, so I would say like a toddler
Right.
size. Yeah.
I have another story of a sighting in Texas
Okay.
here that I think you'll get a kick out of. And remember, just think of the duende as being creepy AF looking. So when I tell
Okay.
you what they're about to see, it might sound hilarious, but just have to remember that they're kind of ugly. So
Yeah.
this story comes to us from witness Jennifer Lozano. Lozano? Lozano?
I'm all lasagna. I'm so hungry. Yeah.
I know that sounds so. Yeah. Copyright 2011. Okay, so this story comes from us from 2011, so kind of recent-ish. They live in the southern tip of Texas. She was writing in on this paranormal website to share her experience. So I'm kind of going to condense this down for us. She basically built her home herself on this property with, of course, workers and stuff. But they built this home, and it was a beautiful area out in nature. And she had 3 sons, and they decided just to get out of the house for a little bit, stretch their legs, and they were walking down a dirt little road, and everyone was just laughing. The kids were kind of young, like I think around like 3, maybe 4, 8, something around there. And then one of her kids had like a horrific scream, and so she turned, like this mother instinct, knowing like, okay, this is not just like, ow, I got hurt, you're freaked out. She looks over to see what's going on, and her son's pointing down the road, and they basically are pointing at 4 little people. That's what she sees. They were each a foot tall. They were wearing pointed little white hats and white clothes, and 2 of them were splashing arm in arm in rain puddles that had collected on the side of the road, and one of them was I can't even say it without laughing. One of them was filling up a bucket with a little water from the little hole or whatever, the puddle. There was the 4th one. It was the smallest one, and it walked with a bit of a limp. And she noticed that there was the 5th one. I'm sorry, there was another one. Sorry. A 5th one was even smaller. I'm sorry, taller than the rest, and wore black and had shorter black hat on as well. So when she saw that guy, she kind of pegged him as the leader, the one that stood out, since he didn't have a pointed hat. It was flat. He was wearing black, and he was the tallest one. She's just like, okay, that guy's the leader of these guys splashing around in this puddle. And so they just kind of, her family went, I guess, from screaming to just staring. Since they saw the mom was just staring, the kids probably took cue to just look, and they're just watching, and the little guys didn't even notice them watching for a minute. And then eventually the little duendes, I guess, looked up, and they noticed they were being watched. And so they decided to just like back up slowly into like the forest area to get the hell out of there. So the family kind of gave them time to like make some distance. They didn't really want to run after them, but they walked up to the place where they had been and to look, and they saw little tiny bare footprints in the mud, along with like little tiny hieroglyphs, is what she said, on the ground. And I was thinking, was it runes? What were they doing? Were these guys doing like some magic? And then later that night, she went out for a smoke, and she was just kind of still like, what the fuck happened today? What did I see? And then as she's smoking, she looks at the edge of her property, and staring back at her are the little duende, and they're looking out through the bushes or whatever. And they began copying and mimicking her movements of smoking and like bringing it up and taking a drag and putting it back down. And then like when she would put her hands on her hips, they did the same thing. And she finally sat down on her mother's old wheelchair and noticed how curious they seemed about like the chair. And then she just went inside after a while, I guess, just like over it. And then in the morning she went back out there, and there were all these tiny little feet print all over her back porch. And then, like, she said that week she went and got her hair done at a salon, and someone brought up duendes in the salon. And then, like, the lady was just, like, so nonchalantly, like, in the chair next to her, like, oh, God, yeah, they're all in my garden all the time. I see their little muddy footprints. And it was just, like, she was like, what the hell?
They're like, that's just so funny, getting their hair done. Oh, yeah, the duendes. I leave them cheese at night.
Right? So, like, it seems like you might not need to fear them.
Right.
But the fact that there's just this overarching storyline of elves and gnomes and fairies and duendes, like, are they all the same? It sounds like, yes, they are. Probably all coming from different places. But are there these, like, little guys that can just disappear into the woods and live, like, among us? Like, what is going on?
I mean, it sounds really cool. So, I mean, I definitely think that they're all sort of related. And interesting that a lot of the stories always surround like a forest type area.
Oh, that's true. I mean, one was like, yeah, I bet where that guy was doing his work, it was still pretty remote, like only a couple guys on that place.
Right. Yeah.
So,
So they try to stay
away.
unseen. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Interesting.
I wonder if the duende kind of know of the Bigfoot.
Maybe they
Mhm.
might. Hmm.
They definitely seem paranormal because when people see them, they just disappear.
Right.
And there's like legends that like they'll tell kids like, oh, they live in the walls, and if you don't cut your toenails, they're gonna sneak out in the night and clip your toenails, but they might make a mistake and like chop off your toe. So like some
Right.
parents are gonna use the duende as like kind of a thing to like scare kids potentially, and they're
Right.
very paranormal and tied to magic.
Mhm.
So I think that they can go through dimensions if anything, and maybe that's what it is.
Mm. It just kind of reminds me because I was going to talk about the kukui, which I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've ever heard of that,
Of
but
course.
yeah, I was like, of course. But I feel like when I was looking that one up, it was just basically made up to try to scare children
Right. Yeah.
into fearing things so that they didn't try to do certain things to harm themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of like I don't know if you would say Hispanic or Latino like culture.
Right.
Um,
Because kukui came from Portugal.
Portugal, okay. And so like
Mhm.
all my friends in San Antonio, a lot of them would tell me about the kukui and how their mom would be like, "You need to do this. The kukui is gonna come
Right.
and get you." And I
Yeah.
was like, "That is so mean and like an emotional form of
Right.
abuse to
I
get my
had this.
kids to listen." I guess
Yeah.
like we use Santa, but we were trying to bribe, and then the kukui will like, "No, I will kill you."
Yeah, I'm gonna murder you in your sleep. I remember I had this friend. She used to tell her child that every time the vacuum went off, that Kukui was going to get her.
Oh, that's so
She wanted her
scary.
kid to get up off the floor and sit down.
It's
So then
so scary.
I remember babysitting her for the first time, and I started vacuuming, and she was yelling, screaming in circles, "Kukui, Kukui!" And I'm like, "I'm sorry,
Right?
I'm so
This is
sorry."
causing scars. I guess
Yeah,
you could compare it to Krampus too. It's just like
right,
tough love to get your kids in line. Boom. Did it
right.
work? Did it work for any of you guys? I want to know. Did it make you listen to your moms? Because I think the answer is yes. Or at least
Probably.
it gave fear and maybe a love for the paranormal. And maybe that's why
Right,
you're here with this podcast. So, yes.
right. You know what? My parents told me that God was watching. That was
Oh!
always, yeah. God was watching, and he could kill me.
Like he is keeping tabs on you, and when you go and you die, he's gonna bring this all up, and it's gonna be shame. Like,
Right.
did you masturbate? Because he knows.
He knows. He's watching you. He's watching.
Yeah,
Good God.
yeah. I guess guilt,
Yeah,
shame,
guilt.
fear. Keep
Fear.
them kids in line.
All the negatives.
Oh man. So I think that about sums up everything I had on the duende. I'm sure there's a lot. Any of our listeners who see anything, let us know.
Yes. So I didn't really have any large stories, but I did come across a few little things if you want to talk about them, which I thought were pretty cute.
Yeah.
Um, did you know? Okay, actually, I should rephrase this because I know there was an episode where you talked about coming across this dude who built a Stonehenge out of foam kind of brick things in his yard
Mm-hmm.
in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I came across another Stonehenge that's actually at the University of Texas. And they call it the Permian Basin Stonehenge. And this one's made out of, well, regular Stonehenge was made out of limestone, but the Permian Basin Stonehenge is still about almost 19 feet tall. I guess it's more like 17 feet tall. And they use these huge leftover pieces of quarry from the area. So instead of it being the beautiful limestone, like in Europe, you'll see these reddish, gravelly kind of things, but they built it so that Druidic tourists could come into the city and have something else to worship if they're not able to go overseas. And I thought that was cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, I should have went when I had the chance. I know that there were
Right?
times when I'd look at it and I'd be like, Wendy, I wish you were here. Like, remember me and being like, I wish you were here.
Mhm.
It's like 3-4 hours and who's going to make this quest with me? And I just like, I knew I should have just been like, did it myself. But, back then I had my issues with independence. So
Right.
Stonehenge, I will see you someday.
Stonehenge. Yeah. So this one's in Odessa if anybody wants to go see it at the University of Texas.
Mm-hmm. That's insane. That's at least 2 Stonehenges in Texas.
I know. Weird, right? I know there's one outside of, on the other side of our Oregon border, just in Washington, and there's one up there, and I thought you and I should go sometime.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 4 hours from here.
Nice. Okay. I think we've talked about that too. I always forget.
Yeah.
We have so many plans.
I know, so many plans and so much COVID.
And so much COVID, yeah. Just like stacking up the queue list here.
Yeah. And the fires, like all these things just keep stopping us.
Yeah. There's a lot of other like honorable mentions too.
Yes.
One I wanted to mention was like all the lights that you can see throughout Texas.
Yeah.
I know you looked up some. The one I was looking up was the Marfa Lights.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was calling them Mafia Lights because I don't know why. I did my research with very low light on my phone, I guess.
Right. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, it's a brand of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Mafia Lights.
So I guess this phenomena of the Marfa Lights, they're mysterious glowing orbs. They appear over a desert, and this is outside West Texas, the town of Marfa. And they've been happening for generations, and like eyewitness accounts are all across the board. Like there's no denying that they happen. People just aren't exactly sure what they are. Some say they're about the size of basketballs, and maybe they'll be white, blue, yellow, red, like all these different kind of colors, but those are the main ones. They tend to hover. These lights will merge together. They're going to twinkle. They'll split in two, flicker, and they'll even dart around quickly. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no time of day specifically. It's usually like maybe after sunset or, of course, nighttime. But there's no really logical correlation going on here. One of the first sightings that I came across was in 1883. A man named Robert Reed Ellison. And he saw the mysterious dancing light. He was driving his cattle through the plains, and he was really spooked, and he told everyone in town about it. And then since then, like farmers and World War II servicemen, and even like they say high school sweethearts, like they all just go to these lights. Like once you hear about them, you're called to it. Once you see them, you're super called to it. Like you want to keep seeing them. You want to keep witnessing them. Like there's a lot of like, I don't know, like romanticism about them. It kind of reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like people just being called to the phenomenon. And I'm kind of disappointed I've never seen them. But you can go actually up to this like observatory that's there. Like it's like a little rest stop restroom, and it has like a little like plateau lookout so that you can try to witness them. Of course, there's no guarantee when they'll be there. But like tourists will just stand there and record, and like they'll see them maybe together and all have like this shared moment and this shared experience of like, what the hell was that? So people think, is it UFOs? Is it ghosts? Is it just like these weird phosphorus gases? Is it possibly the reflection of car lights? And I just love that we don't have a clear answer. And I love that everyone is drawn to it.
Right. You know what's crazy is there used to be this show called Fact or Faked, and they went to try to debunk the Marfa Lights, and they could not. So they tried to use like, is it a reflection of a train light? Is it car lights? They tried everything. They did all of these experiments in the area, and it was none of it. Mm-hmm. And they got really great video of the actual Marfa Lights themselves.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I think that would be a really fun experience to see. Like, what the hell? Why didn't I go there?
Right. Well, you know, things happen. And
it just seems like traveling, even in your own state, like I know a lot of people don't do that. Like even here in Oregon, I was talking to people and it's like, I've never been here. Like, I don't know. We just so get caught up in the day to day.
Right. I'm like, we need to rent an RV and go totally like all around. I could see you and I doing that.
It'd be so fun. Yeah.
Great. So I found several lights too, and a lot of times it was centered around ghost activity is what most people were thinking. Like there's this one in Brazoria County called Bailey's Prairie, and apparently the light is centered around this specific farm, and so they'll see the light going across the ferry, and what they think it is there was a dude who lived there years and years ago, a slave owner, and he died, and so to revenge him or to put revenge on him, that the slaves trapped his spirit there, and so they believe that the light that you see is his little gas lantern trying to walk around or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of these like mysterious lights being tied to maybe a guy's lantern, like the the little swamp gas lights of, is it Bragg Road? That was another one I was going to look into. That it's just like some sort of like swampy road that you can get to in Texas. And when you look out, there's like a little hovering, almost like will-o'-the-wisp type light. And in that area, there have been Bigfoot sightings. There's been UFO sightings. There's ghost folklore and legends. And it's just crazy, like how common it is. And just like this belief in the paranormal in Texas. And I appreciate that. And I don't know, again, like science doesn't have all the answers. And maybe it's a combo of both. Like the paranormal stuff can leave scientific evidence.
Yeah, I would say so. There was one story that I came across that I thought was really strange too, that these people were driving down the road near Toledo Bend Reservoir, and it's kind of like on the Texas-Louisiana border, I guess. And they were driving down the road and they saw this tiny little thing, and it was just like chasing them almost down the highway. And they stopped their car to watch it, and it maneuvered in such a way that it was just like moving strangely, and they thought maybe it was a small little UFO, like a very tiny UFO. So the guy who had seen it, he was like a astrophysicist or something, so he knows how things work, he said. And he was like, what the heck is this? And nobody's going to believe my story.
Right. That's I'm sure one of the first things you think after you don't even believe your own story. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's so hard to believe that kind of shit. I get it.
Yeah, for sure. I came across this other cool thing. It's very, it wasn't scary at all. And I was like, should I bring it up? But then my daughter was like, yes, you have to bring it up because you guys believe in metaphysical stuff. And so I came across this place called White Shaman Rock, or the Cave of the White Shaman. That's what I mean. And so apparently there are these caves in the desert where they have all these painted Native American artwork. There's murals inside the caves that are like super long. And so there's this one that they call White Shaman, and they did a lot of archaeological work to try to figure out what it meant. But basically the picture is this tall white character that they believe is a shaman, and then there's a black one, and they're kind of intertwined within each other, and they're wearing decorations, and they weren't sure if it meant the shadow self or an eclipse or something else. And it was determined after really doing some work that the colors that were used were there to represent the north, east, south, and the west. And so I was just like, my heart was just like on fire, happy to read that.
I'm looking at the picture now, and I could totally see the shadow self, because that's kind of what it looks like, or just even a duality, a yin and a yang.
Right.
I would think masculine, feminine kind of thing, to be honest. But can you imagine if like your cave doodles were just being like debated? Like, I'm not the best artist, so I don't always doodle with purpose. Like,
right.
But maybe I don't really know the tradition. So like maybe when you're committing something to a cave, it is like a serious thing with a story.
Right.
I'm not that well versed on the practice of it, but I know my cave doodles would be like, here's SpongeBob over here, and then here's a cat,
right,
and a pentagram.
Here's a pixie going up a mountain, and a UFO is hovering above. Yeah,
like my shock doodles.
Right, me too.
But I do love that. It's really pretty, and I would love to know the intention behind that. So what the heck is Camp Lulu?
Okay, so Camp Lulu is a made-up story, but I wanted to tell you about it anyways because it was probably the scariest story that I came across.
I just saw this on the list, and I've been like waiting for you to bring up Camp Lulu, and I'm like, okay, but what about?
So, Camp Lulu is a girls' summer camp, like a Girl Scout camp. It's now called something else, but it was gifted to this specific town. See, I didn't write the things down because Brownsville. So it was gifted to Brownsville by a man named Mr. Lulu, and he wanted the girls to have someplace to go. This place is now a nature preserve, but in the old days, they used it for these Girl Scouts to go and learn cool things. Well, there's this story, this legend, this urban legend that a deranged camp counselor murdered all the campers in the 90s. One fateful night after being found and arrested, the counselor said that he heard voices in his head that told him that he needed to kill these kids. And then the camp was closed forever, which the camp was closed in 1993 and then reopened kind of nearby, but they wanted to have this be just a nature preserve. So I'm like seriously, furiously Googling everything to see if I can find the legitimacy of this story. I'm looking up murders in the 90s. I'm looking up everything. And then I find this 1 or 2 articles that says that it was fake.
Right.
I was so like, damn it. It's like, damn it. I was like, this sounds like American Horror Story.
Yeah, I can totally believe that. There's a lot of local legends that are like, there was this murder in this mansion and
yeah.
But then you look it up and it's like, there was never a family by the name here. That was never a thing.
Right.
About that.
Yeah.
But it's just like the scariest stories, and like they live on, and that's what makes them fun. That's the urban legend of it. Like there's Goatman's Bridge, I think, is another one where there's like legends of a little devil and the Goatman's Bridge and things like that.
Yeah, I found one too. There was a witch's castle.
Oh yeah.
So the witch's castle. It was like this woman lived there, and her son was murdered or died, and she was mortified because he died in World War I, and then she just died decrepit there and haunted the place. And people go searching for her castle, and some people are lucky enough to have found it. And what they'll find is like an altar with stuff laid upon the altar, and you'll find stairs that just lead up to the altar. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of stuff that I was coming across too. And I was like, dang it, I need some real stories, not just legends, peoples.
Right,
but exactly. They're still fun. Yeah, they're still fun.
Like, it's kind of reminds me of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I don't even remember if that even happened in Texas. Texas has some legends.
I don't think it happened in Texas, but there really was some basis to the story. But it was more like he killed just a few people, not like as much as in the movie.
Right? I don't know. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the legends can usually be more interesting than real life. I don't know. Maybe not.
Right. But they're all based on something. That's why I thought for sure that the Camp Lulu would be based on some reality, but I didn't find anything. I found that in 1993, near Brownsville, there were 2 girls that were murdered, and subsequently that murderer was hung, but it wasn't at the camp. It was just near the town. Mm. So I was like, ugh. Ugh. I mean, sad. Don't get me wrong, sad. I'm sad that those girls died, but no truth to it.
Right. I mean, that's what we get with the paranormal stuff. Some would listen to this and say none of this is true.
Right. I still believe in all the ghosts, and I believe in the UFO incident. I feel like the big stories that we told, even the Duende, I think I can get my...
Right? I mean, I felt like you would, because you're always thinking about the Tuatha-De-Danann and this like giant lineage of little people, or what do we call them? We call them fairies?
Fairies, gnomes? Yeah. They're all part of the same kind of species.
Yeah, just don't piss them off. I feel like just try to like respect them as long as they're respecting your space. But if they're going to be mischievous, kick their asses out. Get some black salt on those doorways and get their asses out.
I figure this is why I was obsessed with that little TV show called The Littles. Do you remember that little cartoon? The Littles?
And it was like off the book series. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I loved that. And any story that had tiny little things. Fraggle Rock,
Welcome
the
to
Smurfs. I loved all those little dudes.
Right? Oh my gosh, that's so cute. I never thought of Fraggles as little gnomes, but they basically were.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So, I mean, I was going to say there's so much in Texas that we could have chose, but we're just such little weirdos that we chose this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes, I loved it.
Yeah.
Some good stuff. I was really nervous for a little bit, though. I was like, oh my gosh, all these stories are coming up false.
I just get a little bored of like the redundancy of haunted places sometimes. So I always try to keep it fresh for myself. And think beyond, because I mean, like every town is going to have haunted buildings. Mm-hmm. But, it's cool to focus on like the different phenomenon and really how it all keeps us interconnected, and ultimately like it is the same everywhere. But it's a lot of fun to look into.
definitely cool places to visit. I mean, everywhere is a cool place to visit in my mind. So it's like, I think you can find something in every place that you go.
Yeah.
Little treasure.
And we really want to get sighting accounts. I always feel like those are my favorite kind of stories to tell on this podcast, where people see weird stuff. So if you've seen anything weird, or if you just have a cool story, send it into cousinscoven2@gmail.com, and hopefully we can get it into this spooky month of ours. We always love to do spooky Octobers.
Yeah, I'm so excited. October, it's a kickoff. And this is officially kind of our season 3, I feel like. So, because we just ended 2 years. So now we're starting season 3. Whoop, whoop.
Season of the Witch. Here we are.
That's right.
So anything else for this Texas episode?
No, we've got an after show if you guys want to come join us there.
All right, let's go film that after show, you guys. And for everyone else, you can catch us Wednesdays with new episodes. You can head over to our blog at cousinscoven.home.blog. We also have some merch if you're interested, and a newsletter. So feel free to connect with us in many ways. Our Patreon, to get some after show episodes as well.
That's right. May you guys find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other.